welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. My name is Ann Ziola, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Doane University. And our goals in the Doane Alumni Office are always to educate, engage, and empower our Doane alumni. And so we are excited to have you join us for the first webinar in our brand new professional and personal development program called Lifelong Tigers. The webinar will be recorded and shared on our webpage as well as on the Alumni Facebook page. And today we are presenting Cannabis Science and Industries from Seeds to Needs, presenting by Dr. Andrea Holmes. Just a little housekeeping before we get started today. If you have any issues with Zoom, connectivity, problems hearing, be sure and leave a message in our chat box. Our Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, Mike Stellick, will be there to help you with those items. And you can also chat with each other there too if you'd like. But if you have any questions for Dr. Holmes during the presentation, please be sure and type them into the question and answer box. And that should be in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your computer. I'll bring those up with Dr. Holmes at the end of the presentation, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we possibly can. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Andrea Holmes. Our presenter has been a professor of chemistry at Doane University since 2005. She received her PhD on organic chemistry at New York University and was a National Institutes of Health postdoctoral fellow at Columbia University and Columbia Medical College in New York City. At Doane University, she has received more than $5 million in federal grant funding. She supports students, faculty, and staff to conduct the level of research that is typically only conducted at large research universities. Her work with students led to 3 patents and nearly 40 peer-reviewed publications co-authored by her students. Dr. Holmes is passionate about teaching organic chemistry at Doane and is an expert in cannabis chemistry. Dr. Holmes, I'll turn it on over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here today, and I'm looking forward to your questions at the end of my presentation. For simplicity, I'm going to turn off my video so that there's no distractions in the background. Well, since 2018, we have really come a long way. This is when the 2018 Farm Bill was signed by President Trump to legalize agricultural hemp, which basically ended 81 years of prohibition. And this is a big game changer, not only for the United States of America, but also for Nebraska, as well as Doane University. I would like to share a little bit of my background so that you can understand a little bit better where I have gained my experiences and why I am here right now where I am. So I joined Doane University as a professor of chemistry in 2005, and I have conducted a lot of research in various areas of chemistry, nanoscience, and also microbiology. So I consider myself a very interdisciplinary professor. I went on sabbatical leave in 2018 and worked at Agri-Science Labs, where I was a visiting scientist. And Agri-Science Lab is a marijuana testing facility. And basically there, I did a lot of work on testing so that safe consumer-facing products can be sold in the dispensaries. After that, also during sabbatical leave, I partnered up with a capital investment firm and built a hemp extraction facility called Precision Plant Molecules, where I served as a company builder, building it from scratch, a co-founder, as well as chief growth officer. And I am still in that role as Chief Growth Officer currently. Since the legalization of hemp on a national level in 2019, Nebraska has followed suit and also legalized hemp. And this was the signed bill of 657. Now, when I was on sabbatical leave in Denver, Colorado, I had a pretty amazing, exciting, and interesting and comfortable new professional experience. And then when I came back to Nebraska to resume my professorship, this bill was signed. And at that moment, I realized that now I can actually do everything that I have done in Denver right here in Nebraska, and not just in Nebraska. I can do everything right here at Doane University. And that gave me a lot of joy and pleasure and motivation, because I really love Nebraska, and I really love Doane University. It's my home. And so to implement my passion of cannabis at my home was a dream come true. Since I have been back in 2019 from sabbatical leave, I have undertaken a lot of engagement into the community. I realized very quickly coming back from Nebraska that I'm pretty much only one out of a few experts in the state of Nebraska when it comes to cannabis. And I would like to even take that a step further. I am pretty much the only expert when it comes to cannabinoid cannabis. A lot of knowledge is here when it comes to industrial hemp and processing for fiber, but not much yet on the cannabinoid side of the fence. And so in order for me to really disseminate my expertise and share it community-wide and statewide, I have participated in the Midwest Hemp Forum. And the Midwest Hemp Forum is basically constituent many different speakers from different areas that are giving educational seminars and forums throughout the state. And we have done that all last year. And we have reached thousands of farmers and potential people who wanted to enter the industry for the farming season in 2020. On the top, you see John Lupien. He's a very good friend of mine, and he is the state's expert in fiber processing. On the bottom left here, you can see Professor Ishmael Dwight, who is the very first professor in the state who actually was allowed by the Nebraska Department of Agriculture to plant. And then here's Jeff Kostak. He is a very renowned hemp farmer and also geneticist. Hemp is an amazing plant, fascinating from various perspectives, because there are so many uses of hemp. You can use the stalk for fiber and for building materials. The roots have a lot of medicinal benefits as well. Then, of course, the seeds, which are an excellent source of protein. And then the leaves and the flowers used for medicine and recreation. Hemp is nothing new. Henry Ford actually built a hemp car. It was running fully on hemp biodiesel, and all of the exterior and the interior was also made out of hemp composites. So the question becomes, what exactly is hemp? So we all have heard of cannabidiol, or perhaps you have heard it in terms of CBD, which is the abbreviation. On the left, you can see the molecular structure of cannabidiol. But what is really not known is that hemp is basically a pharma factory and a pharmacy. So in addition to CBD, you can find a lot of other natural cannabinoids in hemp, including THC. However, hemp is defined as having less than 0.3% THC. THC is the cannabinoid that actually causes a psychotropic effect of being high. And this psychotropic effect of being high is predominantly expressed in marijuana. And hemp is defined as having less than 0.3% of that psychotropic component. And hemp has a lot of what we call non-psychotropic components, and that includes CBD. So in hemp, CBD is the major cannabinoid. However, CBD is full of compounds, and we call these other compounds phytochemicals or minor cannabinoids, but there's more than that, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. One of the compounds that is in there are terpenes. Terpenes in hemp give hemp the very characteristic smell that it has. And the major terpene that you can find in hemp is carotene. And that gives it that very spicy type of smell that you get when you first, get exposure to the aroma. It's having wonderful benefits, and it's antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and antifungal. But if you look at this arsenal of terpenes that is present in hemp, you're going to be very amazed by all of the different health and wellness benefits these different components of hemp have. And terpenes right now are a very underexplored area in cannabis chemistry, because everybody just talks about CBD and THC, but not many people know about all of the other treasures. Now, I'd like to introduce you to a revolutionary system in your body, and this system is called the endocannabinoid system. In the 60s, when a lot of hippies started smoking marijuana, the medical community started realizing that a lot of people are getting some health and wellness benefits from marijuana. And at that time, more and more research was invested, and a revolutionary discovery occurred, and that is a system called the endocannabinoid system, which is located in your central nervous system. And the endocannabinoid system is composed of two different types of receptors. There's a CB1 receptor, and the CB1 receptor is sort of more of an internally located system and includes the brains and the lung, your vessels. The CB2 receptor is a bit more located on the periphery, such as your skin and your immune system. And when this endocannabinoid system was discovered, it really changed the landscape of medicine. However, the endocannabinoid system currently is still not studied very often in medical school, and that currently less than 10% of medical schools are teaching about the system, even though it's so medically important. Here's a picture of me working in the lab at AgriScience Lab. So in a testing facility like AgriScience Lab, where all of the marijuana-facing products have to be tested, and these products can be all kinds of products. They can be flour that are used for smoking. They can be concentrates that are used for various methods of ingestion. They can be edibles. They can be topicals. They can be used, they can be inhalers, suppositories, deodorant. I mean, the list of consumer-facing products in the cannabis industry is pretty wide-ranged right now. And testing and compliance is absolutely critical to assure that the end user, the consumer, is getting a very safe product. So the testing that's done on marijuana is, first of all, concentration, potency, how much cannabinoids are in there, terpenes, the good molecules I was just introducing you to. So terpene profiling is important, as well as, are there any fertilizers, heavy metals, pesticides, and microbials like yeast and molds. All of these testings are very important so that the consumer on the end is safe and doesn't get a product that causes any kind of complications. While I was there at Agri-Science Lab, I did a really cool research project, and this was an institutional research project, because I involved my students at Doane University as well as my postdoctoral fellow, and worked with the scientists at Agri-Science Lab to design and execute a project that really has helped the microbiologists. And Nick Stolze is a student. He graduated last year. Carly Beda and Christopher and Jared are microbiologists. And then Aaron Sutcliffe is a postdoctoral fellow here at Doane University. And we developed a new method in counting yeast colonies from cannabis flowers. And this new counting method is automated. So instead of visually for the scientists count the yeast and mold colonies, we designed a way how to count these colonies automatically. And this was published last year. While I was in Colorado, I really wanted to make sure that I understand everything about the industry. So I was at Agri-Science Labs testing, but I also wanted to know, well, how do you grow? And so I visited a lot of different types of grow facilities. And in that experience, I actually met a Doane alum who is owning 2 of the biggest marijuana grows in Denver. And this alum is Chad Jasnow, and you can see him here and here. And he has really, really taught me a lot about what type of conditions are needed, what type of moisture, how does the whole process work from the mother plant to the cloning, to the planting, the seedlings. It's just a fascinating topic. Then when I took my next phase in my cannabis career during sabbatical leave, I partnered up with this venture capitalist firm called Linwood Capital, and we built a hemp extraction facility from the dirt floor up, basically. And I was the first, in quotation mark, employee. And I was responsible to orchestrate the entire build of the company. And the people that you see there on the right, those were the people that I hired in my first month while I was Chief Growth Officer and co-founder. And you can see that we're about, maybe 12 people there, and the company today has 27 employees. So the growth was quite dramatic here over the last year and a half. While I was in the industry, really deep diving as much as I could, I realized something very quickly, and that is that in the cannabis industry, there are not very many women on the leadership side of it, on the top, in executive positions. So what I did is I found the few that were, and I got us together in a group of executive women in the cannabis industry. And so what I did there is every month we came together and we talked about our businesses, about new trends, about any kind of new opportunities. And within that supportive network, all of us were able to network into each other's circles and really help each other build our companies and grow them. And there's not many more women in this industry than the ones that you see here. These are it. So at Doane, let's talk about that, because Doane now is in a unique, very unique position to really, really capitalize on this amazing new field that's opening up for our state. At this point, we're really at a juncture where we can do a lot of research, not just within our institution, but also across and collaborate. We can do collaborations and we can advance science. And because this field is so interdisciplinary, we can now use it and introduce it into various courses that we teach already and educate. I applied for a research license from the Nebraska Department of Agriculture in order to be growing hemp here on campus. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because I wanted to establish a program, not only a research program, but I also wanted to make sure that we fully understand or have some expertise in the state on how to do testing. And since my background is in testing also through agri-science, I purchased an instrument that we had at agri-science so we can test all of the hemp plants that we grew for THC and CBD levels and to determine the different growth stages of our indoor hemp. That was a really, really great experience because not only did I learn how to grow hemp, which is not that easy because hemp is kind of like a baby. You have to constantly look after it and you have to constantly make sure that, in quotation mark, the baby is happy. And it requires a lot. It requires humidity, moisture, pH levels in the soil, trimming, training. And then once it's time to harvest, there's a very, very specific technique on how you have to harvest hemp as well. And so these are, so I learned basically bud tending, which you can see me here with a colleague, Melissa Klaus. On Christmas Day, we were ready to harvest. No, actually it was Christmas Eve. We harvested, and so all of our hemp was then harvested and de-leafed and budded. And that was another really, really interesting experience because a lot of entry-level positions in the cannabis industry involve exactly that skill that I learned there. Now, I talked about having a wonderful opportunity about education. And so I wanted to take my expertise in cannabis as well as in teaching and research and wanted to take that a step further and get Doane sort of like on the map in cannabis education. So I put together a plan of building a professional certificate program in cannabis. And I pitched this plan to our administration, and the administration turned around like literally instantly and approved this plan to build a certificate program. And so in the summer of last year, we acquired a lot of experts in their respective fields and myself, and we built 3 courses that are offered on DoaneX through edX, which is the platform that Doane University is using to offer courses in the entire world. The first course is a general overview, and it basically talks about the industry outlook. It gives an overview of the history of the industry, the applications, well, what are the differences between major and minor cannabinoids? And it talks also about professions. Well, what could you do in this industry that's so rapidly emerging and growing? The second course talks about cannabis cultivation and processing. And that included breeding, creating strains, tissue culture, genetic profiling, and also how do you process? How do you process cannabis? Extraction, purification, refinement, etc. And the third course talks about compliance and regulations and the law, and also about current and past cannabis research. So these three courses really give a nice breadth of the industry, and people can either take all three courses or they can just take one. If they take just one course, they get a course certificate, and if they take all three courses, they get a program certificate. The registration ranges from course 1 is at $199, 2 and 3 is $179, and this is the most successful course that Doane University has on DoaneX. We have 120,000 learners in 166 countries. Over the last couple of months, I really wanted to make sure that I get my name out there and that there's name recognition and that I can profile myself not only as a state expert, but more of a national expert. So I really paid attention to how can I get into the media. So I started a lot of publications in the cannabis space, and this is one of them. And then I also talked about, you know, beyond CBD, the 4 emerging cannabinoids to watch in skincare. The future of cannabis products is bespoke and personalized. This is a very, very dear topic of mine because we are opening the door right now for using cannabis-based product to really custom make formulations, not just medicine for the masses, but medicine for you, because not everybody is the same and everybody has a different genetic profile and lives in different environmental conditions and has different ailments or has different needs and sensitivities. So the future of the cannabis product is really bespoke and personalized. I did an article on terpenes because terpenes are another passion of mine. When I'm a big fan of essential oils, and essential oils are full of terpenes because of the nice smells of essential oils going into your receptors in your brain, then smelling. It's really therapeutic, and the bioactive terpenes in hemp will really, really soon share headlines with CBD and the other cannabinoids. Another passion of mine are pets. I have been rescuing animals for many, many, many years. I live in the country in Crete, and I have lots of old and sick and decrepit animals, but I love them, and CBD has really elongated their lives and given them quality of life. And so because pets, especially pets with disabilities and senior pets are my passion, I wrote an article on revolutionizing the pet industry with CBD. Because of the success of the cannabis certificate program, I then took the next step and proposed another endeavor at Doane University. And I put a proposal into academic affairs to build 7 new cannabis courses that are actually credit bearing. So these are academic courses that are all earning students 3 credits. And these courses are all built online, and they're open for registration now. And students are they're actually opening up in August, but they're open for registration now. The courses that we are currently building and that are open is History of Cannabis by Professor Mark Orsak. I'm teaching cannabis industry. Blake Cole-Glacier, environmental science professor here at Doane, teaches the agronomy of hemp. Tessa Durham-Brooks, biology professor here, teaches the biology of hemp. Dr. Mandy McKinney and myself were teaching medicinal cannabis. I'm teaching cannabis processing. And then Dr. Aaron Sutliff and myself are teaching cannabis testing methods. These are such unique courses, and you will not find any of these courses anywhere in the world. So I'm really excited that the Doane faculty approved these courses when they were up for a vote. The next proposal that's currently in the innovation task force here at Doane is that we're going to write a cannabis textbook. And the reason and the motivation for writing a cannabis textbook is because there isn't one. And we learned that very quickly when we were building our courses. Everybody was trying to figure out, well, what textbook are we going to use? Well, there isn't one. And so the innovative idea that we have now is to take all the material that we're now writing, which is so novel and so unique, and actually assembling this interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary material and put it into a textbook. And now we are diving into another amazing entrepreneurial endeavor here at Doane University. We're actually going to start a cannabis testing lab. And this was motivated by the fact that, number one, I have the expertise, and number two, I purchased the instrument that's the golden standard in the cannabis industry. And I have started developing all of the procedures that are necessary to test cannabis. And the reason why we want to do that now is because we have a lot of farmers that have applied at the Nebraska Department of Agriculture for hemp licensing for cultivation. And these hemp plants will be ready for harvest in the fall. But throughout the growing cycle, the farmers need to be supported with lab testing. And there's currently not one single lab in the state of Nebraska that is able to test for cannabinoids in hemp. So fortunately, I again have the full support of our administration to push this commercial project forward and provide almost a synergy between academia and entrepreneurship, where we're serving the community and the state, we're gaining revenue, and we're able to provide outlets for students to get involved and do internships. And so this is another exciting space that Doane is now embarking. And I have to take a moment to not only thank the administration and everybody around me that is so supportive and helps me so much, but I do need to give a huge amount of thanks to our president, who without him, I would have not been able to do any of the things that I have shown you today. I mean, his support to go on sabbatical, to come back and launch the certificate, now to do the credit bearing courses, to build a testing lab. None of that would be happening without Jack Carter. And that concludes my presentation. And I'm going to go ahead now and stop sharing and turn on my video again.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn my video on too. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. So just as a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question and answer box at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. And while our audience is writing questions, Dr. Holmes, I just wanted to make sure and thank you for presenting and joining us today. You have been kind enough to do in-person presentations for alumni in both Lincoln and Denver, and we were planning on being in Omaha this spring until that was thrown off by the pandemic. So thank you for being here virtually to share that information to our alumni really worldwide. It's very appreciated.
No problem. You know, this is my passion. It's just, I love talking about it. So whenever you need me, just get me. I'll be there.
I always like that attitude, so that's good. We do have one question that's come in so far, and that's from Brenda. And Brenda says, for someone who is just starting out in learning about cannabis, do you recommend taking the first 3 courses on doane.edu and then continue on to the next 7 credit-seeking courses, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, it really depends on a few things. So if you want to get a crash start and basically learn everything really, really fast, then you should take the certificate program, the 3 courses that are on doane.edu. But keep in mind, number 1, that these are certificates, and certificates are never as rigorous academically as courses that are for credit. So the certificate, while there's little learning checks in there, in the actual credit-bearing courses, you're going to have exams, you're going to have assignments, there's going to be discussion boards. Whereas on the certificate, it's basically more of a superficial overview. Whereas if you take the individual courses, then you're going to get an in-depth, deep dive into just that particular topic. For example, I'm teaching processing. All you're going to learn about is like, well, how is cannabis processed? And so that course would be really good if you want to become a processor, if you want to become somebody who wants to work in the processing industry. If you want to be a grower or you want to work for a grow, you might want to take the agronomy of hemp with Blake. So it just depends. And a certificate is also much cheaper, but credit-bearing courses are also fully transferable to any other academic institution. So you have to just weigh these points.
Okay. And I'm glad to see that we have our former Board of Trustee member, Larry Wires, joining us today. And Larry would like to know, when will the textbook be available?
No, I hope yesterday, but we just had to submit our program information sheet to the Innovation Task Force. And so the plan is, if the task force approves that we're going to go forward and do this, we want all of the content for the courses are done by mid-July. And then we're going to assemble the content in mid-July. And we are going to start putting all the editing touches in the fall, and then should be done by December 2020. What we need right now is get that together and find a publisher.
Got it.
It will be an ebook, because an ebook is important. There are so many changes in this industry from one day to the next. And so we want to have the capability of making changes as it goes. Also, the ebook is a really great platform for students now, because people, for financial reasons, choose to rent instead of purchase. Or if they do purchase, the electronic version is always much cheaper than an actual physical book.
Sure. And Larry has a follow-up, just wanting to know if the farmland in Nebraska is appropriate for the growth of hemp.
The land in Nebraska is amazing for hemp. Um, it's really the nutrients we have here are great. The climate is great, and it's evidenced by all of the heirloom hemp we have here, or the ditchweed as we sometimes call it. Those genetics are just amazing. And yes, we have a great climate, and even further, I want to take it. We have really passionate farmers. We have the expertise. Now, let me say this. We're not going to be experts overnight. And this first year of growing might be a growing pain. And we might not have the expertise in 1 year like we have now for corn and bean and sugar beet. But yes, we have good ground.
Good, that makes sense. Also joining us is Enrique Sanchez. Enrique, we're glad you're here too. And Enrique wants to know, are CBD and THC medicinal products legally available in Nebraska?
So yes, here's the law with regards to that. In Nebraska, we have several outlets that sell CBD products. CBD is a legal product. It's as long as we're talking about hemp derived, CBD is legal. Now THC is not legal because THC is a controlled substance by the Drug Enforcement Agency, Schedule 1, whereas CBD is declassified. So products are available in the CBD space. Now you can also have hemp extract that contains a tiny little bit of THC, but the concentration of the product must be less than 0.3% in order to be compliant.
Mm-hmm. Well, Enrique, it's great to have you joining us here today too. It's nice to see our board of trustees that have showed up to the session today. So thank you for being here as well. We did have another question come in that said, it's from an anonymous person that would like to find a guide or a source for determining the effects of terpenes. Where would be best for them to look?
There's great publications there. I have, scientific literature that I can send out or make available to you if you wanted to make that available to the anonymous, or if there's a way to upload it somewhere. I base my conclusions always on the scientific literature. So the terpenes are unfortunately underexplored at the moment, but I do have literature that talks about the health and wellness benefits of terpenes.
Sure, and just as a reminder to everybody, this session is being recorded today, so we will post this in our Facebook page, but also on our website. And so on the website, then we can link to some of these resources that you're talking about, Dr. Holmes. That won't be a problem at all. We do have Ryan that's asking, is there a set number of hemp permits per the state of Nebraska? And if so, what is that number and what is the fee associated with the permit?
Whoa, okay. So there's not a limit. Last year for the 2019 season, they only gave out 10 licenses and there were over 200 applications. This year, there was no limit. And I think we have, oh gosh, I would have to look it back up, but we have 84 licensees right now, but they're still looking at applications. And I think the license application fee, and I can make that information available, don't quote me on it, is to apply is $100. And if you actually get, and that's as a grower, and I think once you do get a license, you have to pay them a couple $100 extra. I think it's a total of $400, and for processors, I think it's a total of $800. And then there's also one for brokers. Those numbers might be not 100% right, but they're in the ballpark figure. It requires an application and a background check so that you don't have any criminal history in drug dealing. And what was the question? How much and if there's limitations? So I gave the price. There's not supposed to be any limitations this year.
Got it. And this question goes very similar with the last one you just answered. Maybe there's something else you want to add to it. But Marilyn Hayes wrote in and said that she studied quite a bit over the years about all the products that can be made from hemp, and she's a landowner. And she just wanted to know who to contact if she wants to produce hemp and what the cost is to begin with. And so you answered some of those questions as well.
So, yeah, I mean, the cost, it's an investment. Okay, you have to have either a greenhouse for indoor grows, or you have to have land. You have to buy the seed. You got to buy quality seed, and you know, seed prices can range. You have to have somebody who puts it in the ground. That costs. You have to have you know, water irrigation. That costs. You have to, you know, have organic FDA approved pesticides. That costs. So I don't know how all of it costs. It all depends on how many acres you want to plant, or if you're indoor or outdoor. Let's see, how much does it cost? She said, how much does it cost and where to get information? Oh yeah, I would sign up right away with the hemp program of the Nebraska Department of Agriculture. Just put in Google Nebraska Department of Agriculture hemp program, and you're going to go to the main page, and that is full of great information for Nebraska, and what the current status is of the laws, which testing facilities are approved, what are the current license holders. And you know, and it's really great to see who are the current license holders, because you can actually build your own little network. If you don't know much, you could call someone saying, hey, do you know something? Can we work together? Can we share equipment? You know, so yeah, I would sign up for their newsletter right away.
And Marilyn has a follow-up just saying, you know, she does have some that naturally grows on some of her wasteland. Does that have value for testing for its genetic value?
She has, what does she have, like heirloom?
Yeah, what you might call ditchweed or something that's growing naturally.
I can tell you this, there's cultivators right now who are breeding a hybrid between ditchweed and CBD or cannabinoid hemp, and the genetics are pretty great, but we don't know much in terms of cannabinoid profiling at this point. We don't know, you know, and I know that some people have tested several different batches, but those are maybe like, there's maybe one or two researchers who looked into this. I never have. Once the testing lab is up and running, you can send us your samples from your heirloom and we can look at it. It's underexplored. I wouldn't get rid of it if it was on my land, but
we'll always take those free samples and see what we can do with it. Now, Larry,
keep in mind, if I'm testing it and it's over 0.3% per gram, then you're growing marijuana.
Yep, then it goes.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it is very temperamental. You brought that up in your presentation. Yep. It has to fit specific qualifications in order to go forward, and so that's why the lab is an interesting topic. Yep. Now, Larry Wires brings up, you know, what is the market for farmers' hemp product? Who buys it?
Yeah, oh, great question. And one that actually, this whole supply chain is a huge issue, okay? Because when you grow, you have to first decide, well, what am I growing for? Am I growing for fiber? That would be industrial hemp, which is a completely different strain than if you were to grow for grain. If you grow for grain, it's a completely different approach and a totally different supply chain. If you grow for seed, that's a completely different supply chain, because then you have people who are buying seed for propagation. Or if you're growing for cannabinoids. So these are all the things you have to ask yourself first. What are you going to grow for? And then that determines where your supply chain is and where the market is. You know, fiber currently is completely underrepresented in the United States of America with regards to a supply chain. And it's a complete shame because fiber from hemp is super durable. It's a green economic solution. We can make what's called liquid hempcrete, which can be used for an amazing building material. It makes great paper, so we don't have to chop down trees. The issue right now is that there's no processing facilities for fiber, literally in the United States. But through the grapevine, I heard that there's going to be an investment made in Sydney, Nebraska, to build a processing facility for fiber. And you got to stay tuned on that one, because that was sort of like through the grapevine, and I cannot put my thumb on it whether it's correct or not, but it was a good source.
Well, Andrea, that's what our guests are wondering about too, because a question came in that said, will there be a shortage of processors this year for Nebraska farmers? And if farmers can't find a place to sell their crop, what do they do?
So yeah, very, very important question. And processors, so the one in Sydney I was talking about was a fiber processing initiative. But we also need extractions, right? We need extraction capacity for cannabinoid extraction. And right now, we have 8 applications that were approved by the Nebraska Department of Ag for processing. So somewhere in Nebraska, you can go on the website and see where those processors are. You will have a processing facility if they're executing their plans to build it or to make it available. Now, if those processors are overbooked, which can happen if there's a lot of biomass available, because hemp is a legal crop, you can ship it across state lines to processors that have room.
Good to know that. And that was another question that came up too, is just about processing in Nebraska. Now, those are the questions that I have so far. Are there any more questions that folks have that they'd like to have Dr. Holmes answer while we have her here? I'll give you just a couple more seconds if you'd like to write another question in. All right, well, I think we're finishing up then. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate everybody being here today. This webinar, like I mentioned, has been recorded and we'll share that online soon. To see a lineup of the new webinars that are going to be starting, please go to doane.edu/lifelongtigers. Our next webinar will take place next Thursday, June 11th, and will feature 2005 alum Todd Andrews as he covers the Job Seekers Pandemic Playbook. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. And as always, go Doane.